Okay, in this question, I'm going to look at questions 33, 34, and 35. Not in this question, in this video. Okay, so question 33, about the mass of an individual organism can affect its physiology and feeding ecology. So the diagram shows the relative mass of the carbon, black, and the total wet mass, grey, of the marine crustacean, Calanus hyperboreus, and a jellyfish. Okay, so the first thing is to try and work out what these diagrams are showing. So you can see that relatively, the percentage mass of the crustacean is far more carbon than the wet stuff, whereas in the jellyfish, it's far more wet stuff than the carbon. So, in the first question, it says state one process that results in the loss of carbon dioxide from a marine organism such as a crustacean or jellyfish. So that would be respiration or gas exchange. Okay, not breathing. Okay, because breathing is a different thing. That's the mechanics. Okay, so why is this not moving? Okay, right. So then 33b, the crustacean and the jellyfish obtain carbon compounds by feeding. State one source of carbon for marine organisms other than feeding. Okay, so marine organisms would include marine plants, so that could be photosynthesis, and also some marine plants can literally just absorb carbon dioxide through the fusion from the dissolved carbon dioxide in the water, so through hydrogen carbon ions. So 33C is asking you to explain how energy enters, flows through, and is lost from marine food chain. So if you remember, energy flows, whereas nutrients cycle. So enters. So the way that energy enters is through photosynthesis. So you need to state the energy change here. So you've got the light energy going to chemical energy, okay, in the process of photosynthesis. So that's how it's going to enter. How does it flow? Well, it can flow through feeding. That's probably the most sensible way to flow. And then how's it lost? Well, there are a bazillion ways that it's lost, isn't it? So you could lose it by heat through respiration. Okay, you could say that you've got dead stuff that it's undigested and becomes fossilized, that sort of thing. You could say that only about 10% of energy is passed on to the next trophic level. So there's lots that you can say in the lost part. Okay. So deduce whether jellyfish or crustacea are a richer source of carbon in the food chain. So deduce is state with a reason. So if you have a look back at this picture, well, which one's going to give you more carbon per mass? Well, it's going to be the crustacean, isn't it? So you're going to state that it's the crustacean because it has more carbon per unit volume or more carbon per total body size. And then 33E is asking, suggest with a reason whether having a large body mass is an advantage or a disadvantage for the jellyfish. So you can choose one or the other. So an advantage ideas would be it's going to be easier for it to catch prey and eat large prey. It's going to have a lower rate of predation. It's going to have more reproductive cells. But disadvantages would be it might be slower. It's going to need more energy to be able to survive. And it's going to have a lower surface area to volume ratio, so it's going to be harder for it to do nutrient and gas exchange. Okay, but in this it did state that you must be clear whether you were going to stating this as an advantage or as a disadvantage. Okay, so for this 34, sketch the complementary strands to the DNA. To the section of DNA in the diagram. So you needed to make sure that you had the correct base sequence. So that would be T, and then G, and then A. Okay, and then it also stated that you needed to use the right shapes. So you needed to use the pentagon and also the square. Oopsie, that's a terrible pentagon. And also the circles, and it also needed to be anti-parallel. I'm not sure mine is very clearly anti-parallel because of this slightly dodgy one, but anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so those were the key things. You didn't need to have anything in between there. Okay, it was important to show that it was anti-parallel. I'm sure you will all have done that. Okay, so define what a mutation is, and so that's the change in the DNA base sequence. Now here's a biggie. Explain how evolution by natural selection depends on mutations. So evolution by natural selection is all about variation, isn't it? And what does mutation bring? It brings variation. So that's the first thing to say. So you've got this idea that mutation causes variation, and then so mutations lead to variation. Okay, where you have variation, you're going to have some variation being better than others, haven't you? So then you're going to have some variations are going to be advantageous. Okay, so they're going to confer some sort of advantage on the organism. Then you can say that the better adapted are going to reproduce more. Yeah, so that's how natural selection works. Think of our rinky-dinks. And then you can say that like produces like, or that the offspring, the parents are going to pass those characteristics onto the offspring. That's probably better than like produces like. And therefore, natural selection is going to result in an increase in the frequency of the advantageous allele, which was originally a mutation. And so that's a nice question. That as long as, and what I'd say with that is it's a really good example of where having that kind of step-by-step process and that step-by-step thinking is really good. Okay, so question 35, compare and contrast the modes of nutrition of the tritivores and saprotropes. Nicely, they've provided you with the table here. So what are the similarities? Well, they're both heterotrophs, and they both feed on dead organic matter. Okay, so those are your similarities. You don't need to put both, you could just put one. Okay, so then what's the fundamental difference between the tritivores and saprotropes? It's about their mode of digestion, isn't it? So the tritivores are the internal digestion, and therefore the saprotropes are the external. Okay, so that's all you need to do for that one. All right, so then draw a food chain from this food web showing at least 3 organisms. You had to start with plant roots, okay, because food chains have to start with a producer, and then you just needed 3 or more. So, I mean, there's any number of things that you could have done here. So you could have had plant roots going to nematodes, so we could go up this one here, and then to small soil arthropods, and then to field mouse, and that's at least 3 organisms, so that would have done. Okay, so then explain the reasons for food chains rarely containing more than 4 or 5 trophic levels. Okay, so that's all to do with energy loss, but it's 3 marks, so you need to be clear. So the first thing is state the fundamental reason. So energy is lost between the trophic levels. That's fine. So that's your kind of your fundamental there. Okay, and then the next one would be to talk about the 10%. Okay, so the transfer between trophic levels is only 10% efficient, and then give some reasons. So why does only 10% get transferred? So that's where you've got things like respiration, you've got movement, you've got waste, feces, dead, not digested, uneaten bits, and all that kind of jazz. Okay, so then question 35 continues with some pictures of tomato leaves. And so state one cause of variation in a plant such as the tomato. Well, there are three causes for variation, which are mutations, meiosis with crossing over, random assortment, etc., and sexual reproduction. So you could state any one of those three things. Well done.